right. Hello, everyone joining us today. Welcome to the Ethicsverse here on this Thursday, February 26th. As you can see, I am not your usual host, Nick Gallo. Nick is away this week. And so I, Matt Kelly, sometime guest and co-host, I am sitting in for Nick today. We are still going to have our usual very good discussion. But thank you all for joining us. I suppose I should say, please give us a big wave of emojis, as Nick always does. I promise I will try to be as energetic as possible, but I cannot compare to Nick, who is off the charts. But for everybody who is joining us, as usual, please say hello to everyone in the attendee chat. Tell us where you're from. Put your LinkedIn address in there if you'd like. Try and connect to people who are joining us today. We are looking for another good discussion as usual. What we are talking about is going to be how to build good ethics and compliance teams, how you think about that, how you should try to train your team, how you figure out what training needs your team might have. How are we supposed to do that these days when, let's be honest, budgets might be a bit tight? But nonetheless, there's a lot that we can unpack here about how you can build a good compliance team. We have a couple of good speakers with us. A couple of other housekeeping details before we get started. First, if you want, we do have our usual book giveaway. I think we are giving away which book? It is the next one. Influence is Your Superpower by Zoe Chance. By all means, look at the Ethicsverse library, see the books that we have there, and we are all for trying to build the community that way. If you are looking for continuing education credits, yes, we do have those. Check the attendee chat because our logistics guy, Joa, in the background will pop in some information about how you can get your CEU credits. Basically, hang out for the whole hour, enjoy the conversation, participate. Then after that, we will get the credits to you. And what else do we have here before we get started? Let me see. Oh, yes. So our two guests today, in fact, I will start with my first one. First joining us is Evie Wentink. Evie is a longtime compliance professional and compliance consultant. She also has her own T-shirt giveaway. Evie, welcome. First off, are you giving away T-shirts, not books? What's going on?
I am. So I have Let's Talk About Ethics T-shirt and 3 lucky friends who are joining us today. If you give us a lot of emojis, if you put great comments in, we want to hear that conversation. I am happy to give away 3 of those T-shirts. I am wearing one currently, just to help you to bring the conversation about ethics, compliance, and integrity to your workplaces and wherever you may lead, wherever you may be. Another great things about this T-shirt, I should thank you, Matt, too, is the quality is amazing because, we talk about ethics. We want to make sure we have good things, but enough of that. But I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And we can introduce Ximena. We're super happy to be here today having this conversation.
All right. Yes. The first 3 people who say, hey, we want a T-shirt, you're the ones who are going to get it. But 3 T-shirts given away this week. Also joining us is Ximena Restrepo. She is the Compliance and Privacy Director at Logan Health out in Montana. Ximena, welcome, and thank you for joining us too.
Thank you, and I apologize. I don't have any giveaways, but I'm just very excited to be part of this conversation and sharing all of our, experiences and tips and any, resources and things that we can provide to make sure that your compliance team is getting ready and equipped for the upcoming future, all the things that are happening in compliance and ethics. Thank you, Matt.
Sure. Happy to have you here. And then Nick is usually the one who gives a very gracious promotion of my own newsletter, Radical Compliance. I'm going to have to promote myself. I suppose I should be better at that. It feels a little bit awkward, but it is radicalcompliance.com. I publish a newsletter every Friday on compliance news of the week and a daily blog. So you can check it out. It is free. So by all means, if you want to subscribe or just drop me an email and tell me what's on your mind about compliance news, I'm always happy to talk with compliance professionals. But that's who the 3 of us are today. And then, like I said, here are our AI avatars, as always. Like I said, our subject for today is building a strong compliance team today and how to have that team ready for the challenges coming tomorrow. How you, a compliance leader, can support your team. How do you do that when you have A, tight budgets, B, a very confusing regulatory environment, and C, technology evolving all the time? So how do you figure out what you want to do? How can you support your staff and give them the time and the training they need? And how do we think about all of that and keep it budget conscious? Let's be honest, that's what we have to think about too. Last thing I will say before I get over to Evie and Ximena is that clearly, listeners, if you have questions, we'd love to hear them, or comments, put them in the attendee chat. We will, in theory, save up our questions for the last 10 minutes or so of the hour. But in practice, if you ask a good question, I'm probably just going to put it to our guests as soon as possible. We always want these hours to be as useful for all of our listeners and attendees as possible. So let us know what's on your mind. Let's see if we can raise your issues and concerns and get those in the conversation too. And that's what we are looking to do. So without any further delay then, Evie, let me put it to you first, and then Ximena, get us started here. What do you see as the obstacle for compliance teams these days that compliance leaders need to overcome?
So it's always, and this has been the case for the last, 20 years, it's time and money, right? And resources really are the obstacles that we always hear. Not enough budget, not enough of anything. And, when Ximena and I started to have this conversation, we looked through some surveys and going back to SEC's survey in 2014, where it was the same kind of story when you looked at the results of the survey. We compared it to with the more recent surveys in 2020 and 2023, cross-industry compliance, staffing, and budget benchmarking. So the trend of missing time, money, resources, it's always the same. So what we're trying to look at is finding a different way of how to make do with what you have currently with your teams. And I think, I will throw out this quote that is my favorite quote by all, and it applies to this situation it's by Wayne Dyer. And when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And what I mean here is when you look at your team and when you sell your team to the leaders as the strategy that they need certain things, they need certain education, you need to look at what your policies are on reimbursement and travel for events, going to these great compliance leadership events like SECs, or in healthcare. There's so many great ones. But in my experience, it has been that the people who get to go are the people who are at the top of the compliance team and not your whole team. So if you truly want to transform your team, you have to invest in knowledge throughout your whole team. And, Ximena and I have many ideas of how you can do it. But that's really where you ask, how do they overcome it? The answer is change the way you're looking at your team. Look at them as an investment. Champion to your leaders that you need to change some policies when it comes to reimbursement for attending events, not as a cost, but as an investment in knowledge. And hopefully that will get you there.
And Ximena, give me your answer to that same question. But I really like the point that Evie just raised, that a lot of times you wind up paying the most attention to your high performers because they are high performers, but they typically are the ones who might ask to go for extra training, or they want to go somewhere. And that tension between the high performers or the high attention people versus the rest of the team, I thought that's an excellent observation. But Ximena, what's on your mind when you think about these challenges?
Exactly. No, the same thing. I think that one thing that maybe compliance professionals or the chief compliance officer can think about is really, it's not about growing the team as far as the capacity, but it's about the quality of the team. So it's not so much about the quantity, but the quality of the team that you want to invest in. So So investing on, for instance, have them participate in those activities. So maybe sometimes you invite one of your upcoming, maybe mid manager or entry level that you want to kind of have that person advance to a next role, and maybe invite them to co-present together, to write an article together, to maybe if they're an expert on a specific topic, then have them present to the compliance committee as opposed to you as the compliance officer kind of doing that. So inviting them to co-create together, because then it gives you the opportunity to mentor in a very informal way. So those are other ideas, other things that I feel like compliance leaders can engage with their team. Encouraging to work in different projects too. So we know that sometimes in our compliance teams, we have people with different expertise. And so asking them if there is maybe other areas that they would like to learn, that they're interested in. So have them work maybe together on a specific project. I think those are just, different ways that you can upscale your team. So again, it's not about the quantity, but the quality of the team that you want to focus on.
Yeah.
I do want to drill down in a moment to more about how we can get that done. But I suppose maybe I'd like to take a step back and talk about the chief compliance officers themselves. Is this hard for them to do? Because ultimately, when you're the leader of the team, it's not so much your job to do the job. It is your job to coach everybody else to be able to do the job. And that's not the same thing. And, I have seen many articles over the years that sometimes your best performing employees actually make terrible managers because they're not that good at coaching other people and putting together opportunities and leadership and things like that. So I guess maybe my question is more, how can compliance officers themselves, chief compliance officers, team leaders, how can we appreciate this and what the challenges are for us to lead the team? And how do you know you're good at it, or how do you get good at it? And I'm throwing that out of left field. It was not on our preordained list, but Evie, what do you think of that first, and then Ximena?
I have an answer for that question, and let me see what you think about this. So as we were reviewing these surveys, and latest one was LRN's compliance maturity, team maturity compliance program survey, whatever the name was, I realized that one of the things they weren't asking is how mature the team was itself. So maybe we need to start putting it out in these surveys and really drilling down how truly mature are your teams. Like we were saying, is your entire team get to attend a conference? Do you give them homework to go attend these Ethicsverses and all the various podcasts? There's so much great information across the universe now that wasn't there 20 years ago. So we've definitely elevated something. But as the manager or chief ethics officer, are you asking your team to do that? And then are you also asking them to provide some deliverables? And I agree with Ximena, we should tap into the skills and the things that people like to do and combine it with ethics and compliance so that you get the best result. I'll give you an example. I got an intern. I'm super excited. She's a junior in high school. And I love the fact that I am asking her to do certain things in the spirit of ethics and compliance, but in her way, so that together it is going to be beautiful product that would attract that kind of, those kind of people, kids, employees, whatever. So if compliance professionals can combine those, like something that someone is really good at with the knowledge of ethics and compliance, you're going to come up with great results. This is the how. But you asked about what do the compliance officers need to do? How do they get here? We really have to start asking those questions. So I would hope that LRN is knocking on my door and says, hey, you said that there is a survey we should consider doing. And actually, Ximena and I did a little bit of a survey before we started talking about this topic. And we ask some of these questions, and she can speak too closely to it, all the different questions we ask. But there's certain elements that we found out that people aren't doing. So we will, disclose that as we go on with this conversation, but start asking the questions that you aren't asking or you haven't asked yet. Maybe for everyone listening today, it's take a pause and see exactly what you're doing, see what your policies are doing. Do you have a strategy for your team? Because I'll say, while I was preparing for this, I was thinking about this comment that if you, as a compliance professional, as a team, are supposed to inspire the entire organization and the entire workforce, and we all know it's not easy job. We all talk about burnout and all these different things. But if you don't nurture your own group, your own team, your own people, how are they supposed to nurture everybody else? And I think that speaks a volume to the maturity of the compliance program. Not only the tools that you use, but how you are on the inside.
Ximena, give us your thoughts here too, because I find that when I have been a manager, a coach, it was quite challenging for me to understand how to do that. Another listener here wrote in that sometimes managers coach and provide feedback in the way that suits them best, rather than what would help the employee, and giving employees what they need, which is not necessarily what the employees want. But what do you think?
Looks like there was a little bit of feedback there for some reason, but hopefully it fixed. But yeah, excellent. Yes, we actually, Evie and I spent some time talking yesterday in preparation to this webinar, and there's no survey out there that asked the question about the compliance team agility, right? No one is asking the question. Everyone is asking about how mature your compliance program is, but what about the maturity of your compliance team? And so that's really the gap that we're seeing, where you might say you have an excellent, right, a mature compliance program where you have all those different things in place, but what about your team? They have to be, they are the greatest investment, because if you don't invest on your team, especially in this rapid, right, regulatory evolution, there's so many changes, your team has to be able to keep up to all those changes. And the compliance officer, they can't do that by themselves. They need the support of the team. And so it truly comes down to sharing, right, the knowledge, but inviting the compliance team to also get excited about what's happening, learning, what's new, what are the new skills that they can learn, or what are the conference they can attend, or providing them with leadership. We mentioned that, Matt, that sometimes they are good compliance officer or managers, but they don't know how to be a manager. They don't know how to lead. And so those are like the soft skills that really you have to make sure that your team is learning. Nobody was born, right? I wasn't born a leader. It's something that you learn. It's something that you have to invest in. And so it is as simple as that if you are that compliance officer, that you're just so focused on the everyday, on your responsibilities, maybe this job is not for you, because compliance in ethics is every day. You have to make that effort. You have to make the investment. And so, it's just very interesting to see that we're getting the pressure from DOJ and from, all the government agencies to have an effective compliance program, but no one is taking a look at the actual compliance team, skills.
So let me ask a bit about, let's shift back to what you would actually want to train your team on. For everybody listening, I would love it if you just want to pop in the attendee chat what things are most on your mind as you think about the training needs of your team. I could easily see you might have to train them on what is the actual regulation that we have to worry about, what is the new thing. what are the risks specific to our business and our operating processes, and how does that introduce risk? How do we manage that? And then also, what are the technologies we use, which is really these days just code for how AI is going to change our lives. I mean, those are three very big things there right off the top of my head. But I'm curious how you would recommend compliance leaders trying to assess what their training needs are. We should be building up our training on these big things, or do you look at your team and what each individual skills are? And there's a lot of different moving targets that you have to try and hit. So how would you recommend a compliance officer think through and assess what their team's training needs are? Evie, I'll start with you.
I think it's having a conversation too, right? And because the compliance manager leader doesn't know what he doesn't know, that's another favorite of my saying, you don't know everything. So reaching out to people, I would add a list to your list of compliance governance for, especially for your compliance team. They should understand the compliance program, but they should also understand how to reach across the aisle and not to work in silos, which happens a lot. So one of the things that I do when I have conversations with teams, I give them good examples, like you have to go to procurement, you have to go to HR. There is opportunities everywhere where you can reach out. So it's not only the specific risk-related training that they need, but they also need to learn how to be maybe better people person, how to be a little more of a salespeople, right? Because we're all selling something. We're selling our idea, our program. So that's really important too. And I will add another one, listening skills. We need some good listening skills and understand how we can, use that in training.
Ximena, give me your thoughts here too. Although let me just shout out some of the ideas I see streaking across the attendee chat. Somebody who had said root cause analysis. Another one said business acumen, working across the aisles with other parts of the enterprise, investigations. We had a whole thing on investigations a couple of weeks ago. So there's just some random subjects. Somebody else said privacy risk. Ximena, what do you think about how you figure out what you need or what your team needs?
I've been pretty lucky to have my last two, and including my current one, chief compliance officers, where they go beyond the technicalities. So they go beyond just the knowledge. Like you say, yeah, sure, there's so many podcasts and webinars, for free, that yes, they can get that knowledge and stay up to date, but are they teaching them, your team, about more of the ethical management, and so questions that your team can, other than obviously listening, be a good listener, because that's what we do every day. We listen to everyone's concerns. We get a lot of inquiries from everyone. And so it's really about that ethical management. I loved some of the questions that I know I've seen. I think Athena or Health, they come up with this awesome, and I'll bring it out, awesome list for ethical decision making. And so I actually printed out and I use this. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I used it every time I have a meeting, with operational leaders, or maybe if it's, doing just a quick investigation or like a risk assessment interview. I use one of those questions at the end, like, okay, so for instance, does this decision align with our organization values, right? Is this fair? Is this decision that you're making, right? Is this fair to everyone involved? Does this give someone an unfair advantage? Am I being open and honest about why we're making this choice? So it's really, simple questions, simple tips that anybody can do, not just the compliance officer, but anybody in the team, that they can leverage to kind of, learn how to be more of a human being, not so much of just like the compliance person. And so it's really just trying to meet people where they are and trying to be yourself. And I feel that those are some of the things, the skills that maybe, how you mentioned, Matt, like some managers don't know how to be a manager. So I think that that's really important for any compliance and ethics professional.
It's interesting that, I think if we could string a couple of things together here, ultimately knowing about the business, talking to other people in the business, but talking to them about ethics is probably the most important thing any compliance professional could do or know how to do to have a good, successful compliance culture. I am all for training people on good policy management tools or how to analyze your hotline statistics and all of that other stuff, and that is important. But at the end of the day, if it is about making sure the rest of the employees can make good decisions in a situation nobody had anticipated, and then they have to fall back on what? On the ethical priorities. And so how do you get versed in having those kind of conversations ahead of time? That would probably be mine now that I think about it.
And I'll mention one more thing too, especially now with AI, right? Especially now with technology, where now we have that precious tool that we can utilize to do all the, technical pieces. Give me the information. Nobody, no, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to know it all. I mean, things change every day. So you might know it all today, and by tomorrow you're at ground zero. So, now that gives us the ability, AI is going to be able to do all that, kind of nitty gritty stuff that we used to spend so much time. Now we can spend time on improving other things, improving the gaps that we didn't have the time before, focusing on your team's abilities. I feel like that's just something that, I'm kind of trying to show the positive side of, emerging technology that people feel are afraid of, that they're going to be taking their jobs. But I don't think that's going to be the case for compliance and ethics.
Yeah. Evie, what were you going to say there?
And I was going to add, and you said it, to culture, right? Like this is what we all realize. Every decision, every good, bad, and ugly decision starts with the company culture, right? So hopefully we're talking to people who have a great culture here, and you just have to talk about your values, your culture, and it's part of the conversation. It does not need to be a separate one. It's a part of the conversation. I did wanted to answer Wendy's question because she had a really good question over there asking about conferences. Curious what folks do when they return from a conference, do the materials, and end up sitting on a shelf, or do they get into recycling? And I would say if you have the investment of going to, or you get lucky and you get to go to a conference, or you get to send some of your team members to a conference, there is a lot of information that you are privy to, but I'm sure there is just one thing that you're super excited about that you learned. And I would expect, if with working with my team, is that you bring that to me, you create some kind of a communication presentation or something, and you sell whatever you just learned with the team and share that excitement, because that's what people want to hear, right? You got to see something great, and now you want to share it. We all like to share good things.
That actually was some other attendees' comment was anytime they have somebody on their team go to a conference, that person who goes must do a presentation upon their return back to the rest of the team about what they know.
So instead of must, we should replace want to share what they learned, right? Because we don't always want to do the things we have to do. Like, we want to be excited about it.
Right. You don't want to make it, I in the past, I was put in that position where, like, my manager, with this other employer, and where they're like, okay, you're going to go to the conference, but you're going to, come back, and then you're going to give the presentation to the team, and then you're going to put together some information for the committee. And it ruined my experience at that conference, because I felt like I was doing homework. Right? It just felt like, now I have to do this. Now I have the pressure. Now I'm at the conference, and instead of enjoying myself and working with other peers, now I'm like, they're taking notes. Oh my God, yes, I have to. And so it just became like a task and just killed the experience for me. And so, as much as, yes, you have to trust, right? We are in the business of trusting and be trusted. And so, you have to let the employee enjoy and then just have them bring 3 takeaways, nothing major. The slides are available, right, online after the conference. Then that person, the chief compliance officer and the compliance team member that attended the conference can work together to put together something to present, maybe to a committee if you want to make it more formal. But I feel like if you're just going to have your employees go and like, oh, get ready for this, and it might change the whole idea. So
That's
the purpose of it.
That's an excellent suggestion, Ximena, that, the attendee returns and then you, the compliance leader, work with them and you do, I don't know, some sort of joint presentation or something like that. But gives the compliance manager time to, exercise your leadership skills and to help to promote their abilities and help them get out of their comfort zone and reach up. And they still also have to take some information they learned back to the rest of the team. One question I have is how you would sort of map out the challenge assignments or the career development path that you'd want to give to your team. To this point, maybe that, okay, maybe you don't have them do a full presentation right away, but if they've been going for 2 or 3 years, at that point, maybe. But if you want to map out training needs for your team, those are going to evolve over your time. Your team members' skills are going to evolve. And if you want to keep them, you need to make sure that they want to stick around as well. And so how do you think about how to sort of develop them over the long term? Not just what are the training needs we can get away with our budget this year, but a longer term frame. How would you think about that? I don't know. Evie, what would you say to that question?
Great question. So it's all about the strategy, right? Like, how do we get there? Yes, we all know we don't have to have perfect plans and they need to evolve. That's what makes it great. That's what I love about compliance. You can always make it better. But having those conversations, see where your team is at. And maybe it's next to the performance, review. It's kind of separate. Where do you want to see? What is it that you like to do, and kind of find those things out and combine those. Like for me, I love creating compliance communication. So my boss wouldn't even have to ask me to do this. It's something that I love to do. And it was, I wanted to do it for the company because I thought it was important. At that point, I would expect them to step it up and have me do something else. And, always challenge yourself to do better, because unless you are uncomfortable a little bit, you're not growing. Somebody actually had asked, how does introvert do this job? You challenge yourself, and it's not easy. It doesn't always look pretty. It's okay. As long as each time it's a little bit better, you challenge yourself. And I'll tell you something that I don't really say often about myself, but I did not like public speaking. Like, if you said to me 2 years ago that I would say you're absolutely crazy. That is not me. I don't like public speaking. I get way too nervous. I cannot do this. And now I'm okay. I challenged myself. I did the things that I thought I couldn't do, and I did them anyway. That's how you get it done.
Ximena, what would you say to this in trying to either you, compliance person, teaching yourself to break out of your comfort zone, or compliance team leader trying to nudge people out of their comfort zone, give them challenge assignments to pull them out of their comfort zone and pull them upward? Like, how do you think about that?
Oh gosh, I feel like Evie and I sometimes were just synced, but same thing. About 3 years ago, I do like a three what do you call, not revolutions, resolutions, 3 resolutions at the end of the year. And one of them was like, I needed to challenge myself with like the public speaking part, like go and invest on yourself professionally and start reaching out. Like I was working a lot, right? But virtually, but I wasn't really putting myself out there, trying new things. And so that was one of those things where I started reaching out to someone who wrote an article that I was obviously very interested about. And then we connected over the phone, and then video, and then he invited me to do an article with him. And then when he published it in a magazine, then the organization invited us to present it. And so it's just those little things that you just have to put yourself out there. Even if you don't have maybe the skill, then take some courses, practice in the network, there's so many free resources out there, but also now focusing on the team, the question that you were thinking about, or that Evie actually mentioned, like knowing your team's interest as well, right? So like, for instance, when you're conducting your annual performance evaluations, get to know your team, also on a personal level. So not so much on, the profession, but also what are their interests, right? If someone in the compliance really have like the example that Evie just mentioned about, loves doing communications, that marketing, or it's very artistic and likes drawing, very creative person, then utilize that person to help you promote stuff, make a new flyer, or work with the marketing team to promote your new maybe code of conduct that you're planning on refreshing. And so it's just those things that, it's not just so much, again, about the technicalities of what the compliance person needs to be or look like. If you're an introverted person, like I am introverted, I'm kind of like introverted, extroverted, but I'm not a loud person per se. Like if my team was listening to me, like I'm not loud. I don't want to be in the center of everything. I don't need to have all the attention, right? But you can still be very active, right? Without having to be loud. You can, even the way you carry yourself, the way your smile, right? When you're talking to someone, that makes a huge difference. So you don't have to be, the protagonist in compliance. So that's just another, thought, I guess, that I wanted to bring up.
I wanted to also ask a little bit about some more of the practical training ideas and tips that you have seen work well in a more budget conscious way. Let me just give one example from something I saw in the attendee chat where somebody had said, yet again, we were talking about introverts. I am amazed that probably, I think 80% of everybody who's on this call today seems to say that they're an introvert. But I mean, of course, introverts can do this job, but they had said that a salesperson would probably be really good at compliance because they know how to sell. And being able to project the importance of compliance is a key to success of your compliance program. So that's a long-winded way of me saying, if you were looking for guest speakers for your compliance program, go find your head of sales and ask if they would give a presentation on how they try to approach selling. I have never met a sales executive who doesn't want to talk about selling. I'm sure they'd say yes. But, there's a lot of internal resources you could use within your own company. There's guest speakers. I don't know if there are other budget conscious ways that you've seen for training and team building to work really well. But, what are some of the ideas that you have seen work well? Evie, I'll start with you. And listeners, pop them into the chat and, let's keep it going.
Yeah, so 100% agree. Love that. I've been saying compliance people need to become salespeople. So, tap into your internal resources and get your internal team trained on sales. I think that's amazing. Part of this conversation and why, Ximena and I thought we wanted to come on and have it is our compliance professionals are all so busy and worked with their day to day. And you sometimes lose the focus of the outside because you're so focused directly on what's in front of you. So maybe this is the time to step back. I said it earlier, there are already so many great resources that you could learn from, whether it's the various podcasts, whether it's coming to Ethicsverse, or have a lunch and learn every Thursday with your team and watch Ethicsverse. And then have a conversation right after is that, that's one of these things. One thing that I would say I learned over time when we would schedule a lot of presentations for our teams, internal teams, and we would have subject matter experts come. The most important part was right after the meeting, because that's when you got to hear all the different ideas that just popped into their head. Just like the chat on the side, like that, if you can do that for your team, you're going to learn so much. It's important. So I think we are lucky with the budget-friendly compliance teams. You have radical compliance. You have all these different blogs, right? You have a lot of great posts on LinkedIn alone. I try to post, a couple times a week on things that inspire me. And when you see a post from me, I was inspired by something to say something because I want to make it exciting and not boring. Podcasts, webinars. So if you can tell your team once a week, spend an hour, and then let's talk about it, that's part of your strategy, and that didn't cost you anything.
Ximena, what's your take on this? What have you seen work really well?
Time management skills. So don't we hear in compliance, or maybe in any profession, any executive who's always busy talking about, I don't have the time. Yes, we do. You have to make the time, right? And so if you want to, maybe you're not going to be able to find the time in the next couple of weeks, right? But if you start blocking, right? If you start blocking, maybe on a Friday afternoon, or maybe on your quietest, lowest day, an hour or two where you can just go and listen to the podcast that you have it on your to-do list, or the webinar that you have the recording but you haven't gotten to it. Make the time so ahead of time, and so there is time. Like I just always I always just laugh when people is like, I just don't have the time. We do. We can make the time. It takes a little bit of just a strategy, right? Block the time ahead of time. Another thing too that we do when it comes to, for instance, like our compliance team, when they're doing kind of roundings or consulting around, right, with other operational leaders, in order for us to demonstrate that investment, right, professional development investment in our compliance team, is we're tracking it. We do have actually a form where we tracked the conferences that we attend, the webinars that we attend, like the hours. So super simple form, just so that at the end of the year, our compliance, executive committee members, they can see the investment that we're making on the team, where they can see how many hours of consulting we've done in the organization, as well as hours that we're investing outside, externally, the time that we're spending on, attending conferences and webinars and the podcasts and whatnot. So I think that's another good way also to measure those that investment. If you're thinking about it, or maybe you already do, but you're not showing that will be a really good KPI, good way for you to kind of measure that success of those efforts.
While the thought is in my head, first, let me say, I love the idea of lunch and learns generally. I especially love the idea of lunch and learns while the whole team watches the Ethicsverse. I think that would be a blast. And for those introverts or proclaimed introverts, I'm not necessarily sure I believe that, because so many people here are so thoughtful. But nonetheless, if people are who love compliance and are looking to stretch out of their comfort zone, Nick Gallo and I are always looking for good ideas for the Ethicsverse series and good speakers. Feel free to email me and say that you have this issue that you are very passionate about and you would like to discuss it. Nick and I are always happy to entertain suggestions of what we should talk about here. And then everybody else can have the lunch and learn on what you just decided to present today, which is all kind of meta. I also wanted to ask a bit about the challenges of managing diverse teams. Diverse teams may be across multiple generations. There are like 5 in the workforce at the moment. I'm not quite sure. Maybe diverse teams across geographic boundaries, if you're head of a global team and you've got them on different continents, or even if you just have different nationalities within your immediate team, that there are going to be training and team development challenges there, I guess. Give me some thoughts about how you understand that, how you assess what those diverse needs and capabilities are, and then what do you do about it? Evie, what would you say?
It starts with a conversation, right? And sometimes it's a personal conversation, bringing the team together at some points. Like if you have a diverse team, so I worked in an organization where we were in multiple states, not in the same time zone. And at least on quarterly basis, we would get the core compliance team would get together and we would have conversations. But that wasn't the only conversations we had because challenges were always arising. So we'd have a lot of private conversations. But before we even scheduled our quarterly conversations, which we call the compliance seminars, and we packed it with subject matter experts, we asked, always love that question, give me top 3 things that keep you up at night, right? Mm-hmm. And you see if they're the same or some were the same, mostly people related, management style related, but some were law specific depending on the industry, right? I think things were different, but I think we have to treat our department and every individual in it, and it starts with a conversation. Like nothing happens just because you have a policy somewhere or a book somewhere. You really have to get into the weeds, which I like. It's another, I guess, your Tom Fox reference and getting into the weeds. So you got to get into those weeds and have conversation.
Sure. Ximena, what are your thoughts about this? And, it seems like you could have a lot of different individual talents and capabilities, but also different perspectives and training needs that you have to balance out as a team leader. So how would you think about that and how you navigate it?
I think it's about what I said earlier, knowing your team also on a personal level. So knowing their interests, knowing their learning style, right? If you're working with maybe, someone who's really, really young, they're going to be very tech savvy. But if you're working with, other individuals and your team who are older, they still like to do the one-on-one. They like to meet in person. They like to read stuff. They're going to be printing out material that you're sending. So I think that maybe the difficult part there is just offering the flexibility, right? You have to be flexible to be able to give everyone the opportunity to learn in different ways, right? Just you got to think of generational training styles. That's the reality of it, regardless of AI and everything else. There's just, you don't just provide that one option. You have to be able to kind of provide, multiple ways for people to, to learn. So, yeah.
We've talked about this a bit, but I wanted to go and revisit it a bit more. And Evie, I'll start with you. What are the metrics you should look at to make sure that what you're doing is working? I would guess maybe how would you assess that you yourself are doing well as a leader and you're giving the team what they need, and how do you assess the individual team members in case, I don't know, there are people who might be low performers. I'm not you should abandon them, but some people, they might not be cut out for this. But how do you assess whether your training is working, whether the employees are working well? How would you think about that?
So I guess on an individual level, we used to do something called a 360 kind of a review that was done from multiple layer of the organization, right? So maybe introducing something like that to your team. And it's a survey, it's usually done by a third-party provider. And not only your employees or the people who report to you would get to chime in on whatever scale and comments they make, but your peers and then your leaders. So doing something like that. How do you find out if something's working? I guess it's start asking the questions that you haven't been asking. Like we alluded it to earlier. Mature compliance team doesn't only mean having a hotline, having good investigation process, having your policies, having your code of conduct training, having all the different other training that you can do, and conflict of interest disclosures and all these different things. Those are just tools that you have in your compliance program, but that still doesn't say that the